Falcoholic live listeners, Falcoholic podcast listeners, everyone, fellow Falcoholics, all of you, welcome to episode 192 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host, he is Adnan Ikic, at Say Which Way. Adnan, how we doing tonight?
Doing well. Back-to-back nights. We were there last night for the Q&A with the patrons, and back at it for a regular show tonight. The grind continues. It is the start of June now. We are another month closer to the season, another month closer to training camp, but still in that very, very dead period.
Yep. Very dead, except apparently for some random uniform reveal news. I know.
Which I appreciate. I
Yes,
definitely
exactly.
appreciate the random news drops in June because gives us something to talk about. I mean, we can go for about an hour and a half, to be honest, about just this team's uniform history.
Oh yeah. It's a very. We were just talking about before the show as well. Like a good uniform. They've always had good uniforms. Sometimes they scuffle a little bit here and there, but the red helmet is back. We're gonna talk about that soon. Once we get, we're gonna have Evan in here too once he finishes writing it up for the site because he's our resident uniform expert. But I do want just your sort of instant reaction, Adnan, when if you're here. Yeah, lost you briefly.
Sorry.
Yeah,
No.
what do you think about the helmet? Now that we've seen it, it looks like a pretty true rendition of the throwback Reds.
Oh, I love it. I When the team announced that they were revealing new jerseys a couple of years ago, the the first thing I said and the main thing that I kept harping about was no matter what the jerseys are, give us the red helmets permanently. Like I want those red helmets like back. I just think those with that old Falcon on the side, I think those are the best helmets that this franchise has ever seen, and I think those are the best helmets in the NFL if the Falcons go to them permanently. I'm so happy. This is a great first step. I'm dreaming of a day when uh when those helmets will be a permanent feature on the Falcons uniform combinations moving forward. I know the NFL had that rule where you could only have the one helmet throughout the season. They changed that rule a bit now, so I'm sure a lot of teams will experiment with some of those old throwback helmets, but those helmets will look so good on the ice white uniforms that we have. They'll look so good with combined with the black uniforms. They'll look maybe at their best with those red gradient uniforms as well. So I mean, I'm here for it, and uh, they're gonna be they're gonna be in use for just one game this season. Apparently, the game against the 49ers, which if it was me making the decision, I would have done it for that game against the Panthers, just because the team will probably have a better chance of winning that game.
Right.
But I'll take what I can get, and even if it's only one game, hopefully in the future, within the next 5 years, the team goes back to those helmets full time because as shitty as this team was in the 80s and the 70s, one thing that was always elite about the Atlanta Falcons was their uniforms. Like those uniforms have always been really nice, and even the 90s. Like I'm not knocking the black uniforms with the black helmets. Like those look very sleek, but I don't know. The red ones are just a different level for me.
Yeah, they have a lot of history too. Like I really like them. I think that's a great look. I'm excited to see that mixed in more. I mean, I hope they do it for more than just like one game. I think that they will, but I think they would look good with the black uniforms. I think they would look good with the white uniforms. I think they would look good with the red, like the gradients, like you said. I think that would be a good look with those. We never got to see the red pants. We were promised red pants, and we never got to see those. So I wonder if we could see a look with the white, tops and the red pants, and then the red helmet. I think that could be cool as well. So there's a lot of new combinations with these. I think that they're good. It's going to be a fun look. I agree. Yeah.
The team will always look good on the field. Like we were talking about it before the show started. I can take or leave the black jerseys that we have now just because of the numbers. Like I think those black uniforms from the '90s are absolutely elite, but I think they were trying a bit too hard with the numbers. With these, they would try to modernize it a bit too much. But overall, the Falcons uniform combination is solid. It's not as good probably as it has been in the past. Like I said, those '90s black ones are amazing. Those jerseys from the '70s, those red unis with the
Yeah.
red helmets, I think that was the best look that this franchise has ever had. But the Falcons always, just because it's also just so hard to mess up red and black.
Yeah.
Like like those two colors just seem to just fit together. And as bad as the team has been on the field throughout its history, and even throughout the past few years, they always look good on the field. And the red helmets are just another emphasis on that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, it's going to be some nice combinations I can see unfolding with this. And we got Zach Langston with the $5. New helmets are fire. Yeah, they are. They are for sure. So I think this is gonna lead to some good looks. And I just hope the team reconsiders the number because I like everything about the new uniforms except the numbers. I think they're just a little too aggressive. You've already like there's a lot of aggression on the uniforms, right? Like the ATL on the front. Like I think that's fine by itself. I think a lot of the little design things are cool by themselves, like the little side stripes. But like when you add the numbers, which I think are just sort of hard to read and just a little too aggressively styled, like it just makes it too much. I think you bring the numbers back to like a sans serif sort of clean or more even like a more traditional number look. I think they'll be
And
perfect.
the thing
So
is, about the numbers, you can change them like throughout an off season. I
yeah, yeah.
remember there's precedent within the city itself. I remember the Atlanta Hawks when they revealed those uniforms, the triangle ones
Mhm.
with the Volt greens. Like that look wasn't the best. It was heavily criticized when it
Yeah.
first came out. But those home white jerseys particularly looked really, really bad. And this was the first year of that look. Those jerseys were just a Volt green number and just a white jersey, and that just did not work at all. Like it was so ugly. And then I think without even like telling anyone over the off season, they just changed those numbers to red numbers, and it looked a lot more bearable. Like it
Yeah.
looked a lot better, a lot better.
Yeah. It's
Um,
it's there it can happen and
yeah.
it should, but
And the thing is, there was not even any like announcement on it. And the Falcons like you can do that. Like we can just pretend like these numbers never happened. Like
yeah, I'm fine with it.
we can just
I'm not
never
even mad
speak
that I
of
already
this
bought a
again.
jersey.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, just change the numbers and we'll just never speak of it again.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I that's the one change I hope they'll make, and I think if they were to do that, we would be back in the upper tiers of the NFL. I still think these are good. They're a little bit off of great, and I think we can get there. I think it's possible. So the red helmets being kicked into the mix, like now it's starting to feel like we have some elite combinations. Like I think the whites looked the best. Like the white on white look was probably the best look that they had, but I think with the red helmet, you can do some fun things. With the red pants, maybe with the gradients. There's just a lot more combinations of color schemes that I think could be cool. But yeah, I mean, I think the numbers are the thing we got to change. So Falcons, good. This is good step in the right direction with the uniforms, with adding the red helmets back into the mix. Now we just got to like workshop the numbers a little bit more. That's what we're asking for. So. Clearly they just do whatever we say on here because Evan had been on here like calling for the red helmets and you also have been on here calling for the red helmets for as long as I can remember. So clearly they just do whatever we say. So if we just keep going over and over, maybe eventually the change will come. So
Yeah, it's about time they started listening to us.
yeah, exactly, because clearly we know so much better than the people that do this professionally.
Oh, and by the way, while we're at it, Falcons, let's. I wouldn't mind changing that logo back to that old '80s look too. Like that logo is sick. Like that
It's a good
logo
logo.
is elite.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love that logo will be on the uniforms. Um, as we can see by the announcement. But yeah, just consider going back to it again. I'm going to use the Atlanta Hawks as a reference point as well. I think the Hawks have maybe the best or one of the best logos in the NBA right now. And they changed it. They had that hawk with the basketball a few years ago. That was the previous rendition,
Hmm.
and that was a really good logo. I really like that logo. But they have the Pac-Man logo now, which is absolutely elite. And it's not the exact same logo as it was in the '80s. This is from the '80s look, but it's like a bit of a modernized version. They changed it slightly. So,
Hmm.
I'd be down for that old Falcons logo with just a slight little tweak, because I don't know if the NFL, because I know the NBA doesn't. I don't know if the NFL would just allow an old logo to come back
Right.
and to be the exact same. So the Hawks got around it by just slightly tweaking it. Like the Hawk was like going up a little bit, and now it's like straight, like just a very slight tweak. Don't overdo it like you did with the numbers. But yeah, definitely consider going back to that old logo. That was an absolutely fire logo.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
not that the logo now isn't also fire, but I don't know. There's just something about that old one with the red helmets too.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great combination. It was fantastic combination. So it's hard to top that, certainly. Um, yeah, guys, we're gonna get to lots of talk once Evan comes back in. Obviously, we'll get his take
Oh,
on the new
Evan will go
helmets.
for an hour
Yeah,
about this.
exactly. So we're gonna get his thoughts. Don't you worry. Once he finishes up, his other obligations for the site, and gets on here.
Yeah,
But
you and I might as well just leave at that point.
right.
Just wind Evan up and get him talking about the uniforms.
Yeah, we can just disconnect,
Yeah,
put Evan up on the
we'll
middle, and
take a
yeah,
break. Yeah, we'll take a
that's a good
break
plan.
tonight.
We should just a whole episode, just Evan. We should just do that as a bit. It's just Evan's thoughts, and he just goes for like an hour about uniforms, because that's that and special teams, that he could fill, I think, a whole 90 minutes with just uniform and special teams talk. So that's his like superpower of coverage right there, is those two facets. So great stuff there by Evan. So we're looking forward to talking to him here in a minute. Yeah, and I know people have pointed out in the chat, we did just hear that Marion Barber passed away,
Oh,
unfortunately, at
that's
38.
that's
Uh,
unfortunate.
yeah, big sad. Barber, really fun player. Someone who
Yeah,
will certainly be
former
missed. And
Bucks
yeah,
great running back.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely condolences to his family. He was what, 38 years old?
yeah, 38, I
Uh,
believe. So mhm.
way too young.
Yeah,
Way too young.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, definitely condolences also to Tiki Barber, who another former NFL running back, and
hmm,
his family, because I don't know, you just hate to see it, man.
yeah, yeah. You hate to see it. It always sucks. And we heard about Jeff Gladney last week too. Another player still in his playing career. Gladney was just 25, died in a car accident. So it's just everybody stay safe out there. All right, guys, be careful. Um, just big sad to see these guys, taken too soon. It's just real sad to see. Um, yeah, guys, we do have a lot of topics to get to tonight. We're going to talk about some of the roster moves that conveniently happened immediately after we taped last week's episode, like literally the next morning. So we'll get to like the Avery Williams position switch, the Jeremy Mcnichols signing. We did just get a wide receiver signing today in Cameron Batson, so we'll touch on that a little bit. And then we'll spend the majority of the show talking about wide receiver and tight end, two position groups that are sort of on opposite ends of the spectrum. Tight end, maybe the best position group on offense. Wide receiver, I don't think wide receiver is the worst position group on the offense anymore, but definitely not as stacked as tight end is. And we will break those down for you guys in great detail. Before we get to that, do want to bring everyone's attention to our new fundraising goal. We're going to start up with the training camp fundraiser starting today officially. So thanks to Zach Langston for being the inaugural donator to that. We only had to wait like 3 seconds into the first show of that. Yeah, I mean, and so the tips for this month will be going towards the training camp travel, maybe when I meet Adnan down there, we can go get a nice, meal out or something like that. I know you guys have often donated, with beer money. We might have to just get like a regular meal, not beer, but maybe I can have a beer, but we'll just do something fun, and we're gonna be talking about our plans for
I'll
coverage
have an
there
iced
too.
tea.
Yes, whatever Adnan prefers, he can get his drink of choice. But yeah, guys, so you can track our progress there. We're well underway here with Zach Langston kicking us off. So appreciate everyone for your assistance there and all of your support. And yeah, thanks to all the patrons as well for coming out last night on the Patron Q&A. That's available for everyone to listen to, watch on the channel now. But yeah, all of our patrons, we appreciate all you guys, all your contributions as well. So thanks so much for that. But yeah, let's kick it off with what I think the most interesting thing is, which was that Avery Williams transitioned to running back from corner. You could just tell that like the size was going to be an issue for Williams at corner. Like it wasn't even that he was like out of position or anything like that. He was just getting, like CeeDee Lamb, like, just dominated him, just outreached him, outmaneuvered him. It just wasn't, you could tell this was not a position that Williams was ever going to be a starter at. He was always going to be limited by his size. I think he only had like 27.5-inch arms, which is like very small even for a corner. So that was a tough position for him to sort of make a long-term impact at. Obviously, he has his special teams contribution, but now at running back, your arm length don't matter at running back. Your length overall doesn't matter. In fact, I think being 5'8" could be beneficial for your center of gravity and stuff like that at running back. So he moves there. Apparently he was already fairly close to 200, so the weight gain that he might have to go through to get up to playing weight at running back maybe isn't that far off. I think it's cool. I think it's an interesting idea. I think he's got a clearer path to the roster as the fourth running back. I don't know how he did play running back in high school, I guess, pretty successfully. So it's not like he's never played the position before. But what do you think about Avery Williams changing positions?
I think it is a bad sign for guys like Quadri Allison. Uh, maybe the team carries 5 running backs because Avery Williams, this is the heavy favorite for return duties.
Mm-hmm.
He was very good at that job last season as well, and I have no doubt that he's gonna win that job again this year. There will be a bit of a return competition, I think, with him and the new wide receiver that they got today, and I'm sure we'll get to that pretty soon in the show. But yeah, it's a bad sign for guys like Jeremy Mcnichols and Quadri Allison who are fighting for a spot on the depth chart, because if Williams automatically makes the roster as a running back, you're talking about having 4 running backs already, because I'm assuming Patterson, Damian Williams, their jobs are safe, as well as Tyler Algier, who the team just picked in the 5th round. They obviously don't want to cut him right after drafting him. So, it's going to be a question of whether or not the team's going to carry a 5th, but I can easily see the team going into the season with 4 running backs, Williams being one of them. That's the main thing that this tells me right now, is that the job of Quadri Allison / Mcnichols is in jeopardy right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's tough for someone else to make it now without being a bigger contributor on special teams, because most of the time the Falcons didn't even activate the 4th running back when that player wasn't, playing a major role in special teams. So like, that's why I was sort of confused by the Mcnichols signing too, like, because I feel like his path to the roster is pretty difficult. Maybe he's just veteran insurance, which we've clamored for on the interior offensive line, so that makes sense to me. But in terms of him actually making it over like Patterson or Damian Williams or Tyler Algier, like Mcnichols doesn't play special teams. He like really never has played special teams at all. So I think it's going to be tough for him to make it. Olsen, I feel like Olsen always flashes a little bit, but he just never seems to make his case for getting more opportunities, and so he's definitely going to be in a tough place there. And then Caleb Huntley is the one too that's going to have a much tougher time, because I think Caleb Huntley has a lot of fans. He certainly fits this offense well, but yeah, it's it's tough to see. Yeah, Evan, we're definitely going to get your thoughts on the uniforms because I know that's sort of your wheelhouse. But to wrap up our discussion about Avery Williams transitioning to running back, what do you think about that move? Evan, did we lose you? You might
I
be
think
I
muted.
was
you're
muted.
muted.
Oh,
I
okay,
was
there we go.
definitely
And
muted.
look,
Oh,
and
there we
look at
go.
him right
Oh, look
now.
at this
Look
man.
at
Yeah.
Evan
Well,
in
no,
full
boys.
uniform.
Let me
Yeah, we
talk
gotta
about
wait. We
Avery
gotta wait.
Williams.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the thing, no, yeah, no, I mean it's surprising, especially as you mentioned, they have like a ton of depth. But also at corner, there's a ton of depth too. Probably some of the most this whole offseason's been at corner. So it makes sense. Avery Williams, he may be a corner, but he's a special teams weapon, and maybe they saw enough last year. Specifically what he did in the punt return game, where he was like literally PFF's like one, I think one or two uh, punt grade, punt return grade. So maybe they saw enough there that they're like, hey, we need to get this dude on offense, or they're so impressed by the corner depth that they're like, we need to keep this dude on the roster. So if we got to put him at running back, let's put him at running back. I mean, he's going to be on the team just because of what he brings to the return game. So that's probably the key thing. He's probably not going to be, anything more than depth running back. You may not even see a whole lot of him, actually being a running back, maybe more like trick plays or whatever. But either way, it's kind of cool. As long as he's
Yeah.
on the roster, I don't care. So
Yeah, yeah. I think it's easier to carry him there as opposed to corner where like I think he was game certainly when he had to play last year, but like I think his size limitations are a lot more are accentuated a lot more at corner, whereas at running back it really doesn't matter. Like you can be 5'8" at running back, it might even be beneficial, like the lower center of gravity thing. But I don't think he's played it since high school, but he has played it, so I think that it'll be easier for him to make an impact there, and maybe he can turn into something. Maybe a third down sort of back, like a lightning to the Falcons Thunder sort of guy. I think he's an intriguing player there. Obviously, he's very good with the ball in his hands. Very good hands. If you're being relied upon to catch punts and kicks, you got great hands. So just has to get used to catching passes and taking handoffs a little bit more again, but I think it's interesting. But we won't delay it any longer. Evan, we need to know. Obviously, you've already been prepared with your helmet, but what do you think about the
yes,
official
my
announcement?
soul
Yeah.
has been ready for this moment.
Yes.
I don't know. To me, they're like, and I'm obviously biased as a Falcons fan, but they're like such like a clean uniform, and it doesn't on paper make any sense. But like the gold stripe is random. There's no gold on any part of the uniform, but it's just like the icing on the cake. And I'm glad they actually like brought that aspect back. Like we've seen, when they got new uniforms, they went the, more modern route. Maybe like a touch of kind of like the style of the old, having pretty much just solid black jersey with but like different font and stuff. But with the throwbacks, it's the throwback uniforms that we've seen, but having a red helmet, gray face mask. It'll be interesting seeing in the upcoming years, like if they do more, like try and incorporate like the '80s throwbacks and stuff like that. Now that they can kind of play around with it, I'm gonna take this off because it's keeping my jaw restricted from being able to move. Um, but and now my earbud is like out of my ear. Never put your earbuds through the ear holes in the helmets. Is a terrible idea. But I'm excited. There were some other teams like Tampa and I think Philadelphia that announced that they're going to be doing throwbacks, but because of supply chain, they're not able to do it this year. So that was kind of a thing I was curious if the Falcons were going to announce it but then be like, oh, but it's not happening until next year. Um, but great news. I don't know why, but for some reason they're able to, but they'll be wearing it against 49ers apparently on October 16th. So according to that, that's just one game, which I would have liked to see like two. But I mean, the red helmets are back. If I got to wait till October and only see them once this year, perfectly fine. So yeah.
Uh, there was a very good question posed, Evan, in the chat.
Yeah.
What, Kevin, are you on mute? I think Kevin may be. I think Kevin may
might
be on mute.
He might be.
Yeah. I think I'm on mute. Yep.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're back.
Yeah.
Evan, did you wear that while writing the article on the helmets?
No, of course, that would be ridiculous. No, but I had the jersey on because I was planning to come on here right after, and then I have my helmet usually back here, and I'm like, well, why not just be stupid and put it on? The worst part is it is a pain in the ass to get off. It hurts like my ears to rip the helmet off.
Yeah.
So I inflicted pain for everyone's amusement. But it's a special day, so
That's what we do on every post-game show, right? So yeah.
Yes, I did it for the people.
Yes, exactly. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, guys, I've been muting my microphone when I'm not talking because I have to run my air conditioner finally up here in New York because it's too hot. And it, I think it makes a noise. Maybe you can hear it, maybe you can't, but I don't want it to infiltrate the pod audio in some form or fashion. But yeah, it's cool helmet. We're all excited to see if they deploy it. We know they're going to deploy it for the one game. I hope they deploy it in more games than that. But we will see. We will see. Yeah, so we talked about Avery Williams. Let's talk about some of the other roster moves before we get to wide receiver and tight end. We'll talk about Jeremy Mcnichols. We touched on it a little bit. Former Titans running back, was sort of their third down back. That's sort of his specialty. Adnan, you got any thoughts on that signing? I mean, we just sort of mentioned that it's probably going to be tough for him to actually make the roster, but he's good veteran insurance. Obviously, he's experienced. So yeah, what do you think about Mcnichols joining the Falcons depth chart?
I think it'll be exciting for us in the preseason again, seeing guys with actual NFL talent and who have had regular season experience playing in the fourth quarter of some of those preseason games. Mcnichols is someone who Arthur Smith is a little familiar with. I would say, well, he's familiar with him in that I think he was Tennessee's offensive coordinator in Mcnichols' first actual year with the Tennessee Titans. Like Mcnichols was in camp and or I think Mcnichols was on the Tennessee Titans roster in 2018, but I don't think he ever really got playing time, or at least not a lot.
Yeah.
And in 2020, he came back to Tennessee and he did get some regular season playing time. So this is definitely one of those signings where Arthur Smith is familiar with him. He had a career high 47 carries in 2020 under Arthur Smith, 204 rushing yards. So nothing really extensive last year. He had 41 carries, a little over 150 rushing yards. Wasn't really inspiring. Didn't really showcase very much. He was a better receiving back last year. He was in that role after Derrick Henry went down. And they signed, I think, Adrian Peterson, and just had this just uninspiring committee going to replace the most dangerous weapon in the NFL, which didn't really. Well, it worked out a little bit. I think they did get that bye week.
Yeah.
So yeah, he had more receiving yards and rushing yards last year. He was their receiving threat, but it's gonna be it's gonna be hard to make this roster. Like I said, with Williams being that running back, Mcnichols he'll be fighting it out with Quadri Allison, and he'll be fighting to prove to the coaches that they should carry 5 running backs, because coaching staff can easily just cut them both before the end of the preseason. And, this is in addition to anyone else that the team may sign before training camp and before the preseason. But, I figure if he does make the roster, he'll probably be inactive most weeks and just an injury replacement. But, he may be a practice squad candidate.
Yeah. That would make sense. Him or Quadri Olson, someone who's got experience in the scheme, that sort of thing makes a lot of sense to me too. Evan, you got any anything else you want to add on Mcnichols joining the team?
No, not much more than what Anon said. Just more depth, and this is why the preseason is important, because that's time for, Mcnichols, Huntley, Ollison, and now I guess even Avery Williams to kind of prove towards the back end, because Patterson's safe, Damian Williams should be safe. So, and then obviously Algiers safe. So that kind of fourth running back role is going to be interesting during the preseason.
Yeah, it will be interesting for sure. Before we get to the next one, I want to read off George Costanza's donation to the training camp fund, $5. Thank you so much, George. He says, Evan, nice Barkowski jersey. I picked up mine in Korea, of all places, where he got his.
I think it's backwards. It's actually Birchfield.
Oh, there you go. Hey, there you go. See?
It's 0-1.
Okay.
I got it for Christmas.
That's funny.
Actually, my mom got it for me and meant to put like number 1, and I guess it did 0-1. So yeah.
Hey, that's
works.
Good though.
Nobody's ever gonna wear it. So
yeah, it doubles as Barkowski though, because if people, it looks like 10, so it's like it does double duty, and it starts with the B as well. So casual onlookers will also think that. So it really does double duty. But yeah, George says he got one in Korea. It's got all the tags on it, but it was just $11. So you gotta love the knockoffs.
Yeah, I was gonna say those knockoffs in foreign countries are absolutely elite.
Yes, big time.
You can't even tell. Like you would have to be like looking for something specific, and even then you might struggle.
Yeah. I mean, DHgate has turned into a massive market right now for knockoff jerseys being shipped in from China.
Yeah.
It's much more manageable to give the $20 and then pay the $10 shipping than it is to spend $120 on a baseball jersey, or like $115 on a football jersey. So shout out to shout out to those guys, and the teams try to guilt people into buying their overpriced jerseys all the time, but
the good thing is since Nike kind of took over, and I know they don't do everything well, but with jerseys, if anybody remembers the Reebok ones, if you bought like the lower quality Reebok ones, this all was like holes and stuff, and it would just fade, or it would just fade over time. This is like basically the cheapest one. It was custom, so it cost a little more because I got Birchfield on it, but this is like the bottom one, and it's I've had this for years, so that's kind of a good thing. At least your money's worth it, where the Reebok ones,
the Reebok ones sucked.
A couple years they were done. This started fading, and it was all screen printed, and it just faded quick. So
no, it's good stuff there. George also adds in, love the 80s throwbacks, but hopefully we don't play like we did in the 80s. Let's go for the look, not the on-field results.
George, between you and me, this team the past 4 years hasn't been much better than that team from the 80s.
Yes, that's very true. So hopefully we can reverse that trend here pretty soon. But let's talk about the signing that came down today, which was Cameron Batson, a returner for the Titans. He played 3 years in Tennessee, 2018, didn't get any snaps in 2019, but was there in 2020 and 2021. Then sort of I think he ended up on IR a few games into the season last year. And then apparently he has recovered from his ACL tear, is ready to go now. Not someone who doesn't have a ton of production, but similar in size, stature to like a Demir Bird. But any thoughts on Batson joining what is now an extremely crowded wide receiver room, Evan?
No, not a whole lot. Don't know a whole lot about him. I trust Corey Woodruff, one of our writers, is based in Tennessee, and because of that, kind of knows more about Titans players and stuff like that. And he thinks he has a real shot to make the roster. So that I found that kind of interesting for somebody they're getting this late.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because he they did pick him up late. He doesn't have a lot of production, but he's still stuck around with the Titans for 4 seasons. So it's interesting that he's lasted that long, despite only catching, I think, 22 career passes in 4 seasons. So the fact that Arthur Smith brought him back means that he must like him. I mean, I think he's only 26 6 or something like
Yeah,
that.
and
So,
he could have been just somebody who kind of fell through the cracks. And as you mentioned, Arthur Smith felt like he had something, more to give. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. I mean, it's a low, there's like no risk to signing him. And if he even thinks there's a possibility he could be really good, that's good enough for me.
yeah, yeah. We'll obviously talk about the wide receiver depth chart here in just a little bit when we get to the review. But yeah, in terms of his athletic testing, he's an 8.9 RAS, so certainly fits that sort of threshold that they like. 5'8", 175. So definitely not the size that we've seen them sign typically, but 4.35 40, which is obviously really good. 6.69 3-cone, which is elite. 4-second flat short shuttle, also elite. And he jumped 39 inches in the vert too. So I mean that's pretty darn good for someone who's only 5'8". So yeah, I mean certainly an athletic guy, maybe another speed deep threat. Adnan, you got any other Batson takes?
Yeah, those testing grades from the combine, excuse me, are the reason why he's still in the NFL, because those numbers are very, very good. Like, they're incredibly impressive, and this is someone who, in his career hasn't really uh done much. I think he'll be a special teams contributor. If he does make the roster, it'll be very, very difficult with the Falcons depth chart at wide receiver, which we'll probably get into pretty soon. But this is a guy that Arthur Smith, just like Mcnichols, is very, very familiar with. Someone who was part of Arthur Smith's offense, greater offense. He didn't really play very much. Never had more than 100 receiving yards in a season. But, this is someone who could potentially make his way onto the roster via special teams. And, just another name, another guy to keep an eye on during the preseason, because this wide receiver battle is going to be an absolute bloodbath, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's going to be
13 receivers now that they have. So I don't know if somebody got hurt and they're bringing in a replacement, or they're just sort of shuffling, or if, like, are they going to cut one of these receivers, or are they actually going to keep 13? I mean,
I doubt they keep 13 wide receivers. Oh, you mean into the
like
season?
into training camp even. Like that's a lot even for training
Yeah.
camp. So
Yeah. I mean, possibly, but looking at it, you figure the top three are safe. You figure London, Zacchaeus, and Brian Edwards, they're good. They're safe. I'd say Auden Tate has potentially an inside track to that number 4 wide receiver spot. They did sign him pretty early. I think they really like him. He has the body type to fit into what Arthur Smith wants in a wide receiver. And then after that, it's just.
I think Demir Bird's probably safe too.
yeah, I think so. And this is a good seg.
But even then,
into this conversation.
Yeah, I mean that's 5 already taken up just based on what Adnan said, and then Demir Bird.
Yeah, Cadaryl Hodge has NFL experience, and
Yeah,
he's a good special teams guy. Geronimo Allison has special teams experience. Frank Darby was a draft pick by this regime last year. Tyshon Williams did an interview with Evan for the site, so that's just as good as these other guys.
And he's a big dude. He's like 6'3",
6'2", 6'3", yeah.
Kevin's son, Austin Trammell's still there.
Yep.
Yeah, and he was in training camp last season.
Stuck around all.
Yeah. He was on the roster for what, like 2 weeks or something?
Yeah, he was on the roster for a few weeks. He stuck around on the practice squad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, and now this is a guy who can be a good special teams player if he's healthy after his torn ACL, and a guy that Arthur Smith clearly likes because Batson stuck around in Tennessee throughout all of Arthur Smith's time as the offensive coordinator. So I don't know. It's gonna be an absolute bloodbath in the preseason and in training camp, and it'll be like it could be 8-9 wide receivers competing for one spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a great seg into the actual wide receiver review here, because it is getting extremely crowded, and I do suspect that we will see a cut to accompany the Batson signing, because I think that puts them at 91 with the Batson signing. So they probably have to make a corresponding move eventually. It just hasn't been announced yet. I guess I could be wrong about that. I haven't been tracking it extremely closely, but it's really quite crowded now. We've got, like you said, Drake London, obviously 100% safe as the 8th overall pick.
I would hope so.
Yeah. So we're obviously not having any concerns there. You would think Bryan Edwards has a great chance to be the wide receiver 2, but probably the wide receiver 3 at worst, considering they just traded for him. And then it's open more, but I think there's sort of like another tier of guys here, like let's see, this next tier, it's tough to pick, because I think like Damiere Byrd is in this tier, Olamide Zaccheaus is in this tier, Auden Tate is in this tier, and then so that alone is 5, and I think all 5 of those guys are pretty like, these guys are probably making the team unless something crazy happens.
They get injured, or they just like decide they can't catch anymore.
Right. So like they might only keep 5. Like it's not unheard of for that to happen when you keep 4 tight ends and 4 running backs and a fullback, which is what they do usually.
And also, that's a good point. There's going to be some pressure on these guys too, who we're assuming are going to be safe beyond Drake London. I mean, London. No, if London drops every single ball in training camp, he's still going to be on this roster for no reason other than he was the 8th overall pick.
But yeah, because Jamar Chase couldn't catch, and now we know what happened.
Those preseason overreactions. But a guy like Olamide Zaccheaus, Bryan Edwards, if they go into the preseason pressing, and they're just dropping passes left and right, and they're making mistakes, then all of a sudden, the ground could get a bit shakier. So, yeah, it's a mental aspect too, knowing that, hey, there's a horde of guys that are right behind me, trying to gun for my spot, trying to gun for my position, and if I don't impress this coaching staff, and if I make silly mistakes, then I could be opening that door to these guys to come in and take my job. So, that's part of the mental aspect of fighting for a position where you're not one of those star guys and you're not guaranteed your spot on the depth chart.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think we got like those top 5. I would think are pretty safe. I mean, they're not safe, but like they seem to be like, I guess we call them the heavy favorites, those 5 guys. After those guys, it's like we're maybe talking one more receiver out of the like remaining like 10 guys or whatever it is. So like it's going to be really fierce for that 6th spot, and they're probably going to keep like 2 or 3 on the practice squad too. That's what they did last year. Now that the 16-man practice squads are official, you can carry a lot of receivers, you can carry a lot of offensive, you can carry like a lot of developmental players, and they've definitely, last year at least, kept a lot of receivers. I think they kept 3 on the practice squad most of the year. And they are at 91 officially on the roster, guys. So there is going to be some corresponding move made. I don't know where that would be, but I suspect it would be a wide receiver. Maybe somebody getting put on like PUP or something like that, or an injury maybe. I don't know. But I think Cadaryl Hodge, probably the favorite because of his special teams ability. Really, really good gunner. We know this team values that. And honestly, if you're the wide receiver 5 or 6, like your special teams contributions might be more important than your offensive contributions, because that's how you're going to be active on game days. If you're going to be like if you're the gunner, like Cadaryl Hodge can be, that might actually lead to him, even though he's like nominally the wide receiver 6 in terms of like offensive ability, he might actually be active on game days over like an Auden Tate or Damiere Byrd or whoever's sort of the wide receiver 5, because he's playing special teams, whereas like Auden Tate doesn't really play special teams, for instance. So you guys also mentioned like my son Austin Trammell, who I think has a shot as well. Geronimo Allison was recently added too. Then there's all the UDFAs, and then we haven't even talked about Frank Darby, who was drafted by this team hasn't really done anything yet, but it's like, he's a sixth round pick from a year ago. That's not like premium draft capital, but you sort of have to think they are interesting to they're interested in keeping that guy around. And then they just added another receiver. So yeah, I mean, I think I would probably think that Cadaryl Hodge has the pretty big advantage there, but are you guys in that same boat in terms of wide receiver 6, or do you have another favorite, like a dark horse perhaps, to beat out Hodge for that final receiver spot?
For me, it's probably Hodge, maybe Hodge and Allison, just because of his experience compared to the rest of them. But it's really like a genuine toss-up. You could say any of these guys, and I wouldn't be surprised. It just seems like they're going to have a great shot to prove themselves. There's also Jared Bernhard, the lacrosse superstar who played I think a bunch of positions at Fair State, which is a pretty good story. As you mentioned, like Tyshon James, Stanley Berryhill, who a lot of people are high on. Yeah, it's a true toss-up. But yeah, if they go like, okay, we need a special teams guy, it'd probably be Cadaryl Hodge. But also, like Allison, like I said, brings more experience than probably all of them. Without looking up his stats and stuff, I just remember him playing for the Packers and stuff, and I think he spent some time with the Lions. Yeah, and then the Frank Darby experiment might be over. He might be a practice squad guy at minimum, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be very difficult for Darby to make this roster.
Yeah,
I think they'll try to stash him on the practice squad. He was one of their draft picks last year. Yeah, Hodge has that special teams experience. It's what he's mostly done at the NFL level. And he's someone where if you're in a really bad pinch, he has some experience on the field as well. And that's pretty much exactly what you look for in a wide receiver 5 or 6. Someone who can maybe step into that role of seeing the field a bit more for a spot start or two in case of an injury, because it's the NFL. There's always almost always going to be an injury. That's just the nature of the sport.
Mm-hmm. Especially at a position like wide receiver, where you're going to have 6 guys if they're playing special teams too. Like at a certain point, you're going to need someone to step in, even if it's for a couple games, which is, I think, why they're bringing all these receivers, because they're planning to keep a bunch on the practice squad. And I think that as this is a young group, and knowing where this team is in its sort of team building, I guess, progression, they're going to be loading up on these cheap, high upside, young receivers to see if they can find any hits at all. Because they can find UDFA guys like Olamide Zaccheaus, for example. That's a really cheap young guy you can stash and develop to help pad out your receiving core, because the Falcons more than likely are going to be paying some wide receiver next year. Whether that's they keep Calvin Ridley around or they sign another guy, they're going to probably go after somebody in free agency to really round this group out. Even though I think like Drake London and Bryan Edwards are a good potential 1-2 combo, they're probably going to want another veteran in there to sort of round it out. So I'm interested to see what happens there. But moving past the top 6 spots, because I think those are going to be tough for these other guys to crack. I think the top 5 we mentioned of like Drake London, Bryan Edwards, some combination of Demir Bird, Olamide Zaccheaus, and Auden Tate, and then like a Cadaryl Hodge. Those are probably like the favorites. Moving past them, we talked about this big clump of guys that are competing for these practice squad spots. Any of the names there really stand out to, I'll go to Adnan first on this, any of those sort of names, whether it's Frank Darby or Tyshon James, the UDFA, Geronimo Allison, I got my boy Trammell, like any of those guys sort of stand out to you as like a guy that you're thinking is a favorite for the squad? This is the deep roster we're talking about now.
We're talking practice squad?
Yeah. It's time. Yeah.
Yeah, this is June content, guys. This is very early June content. Like I said, I think just due to his age and due to the fact that the team liked him enough to draft him in the 6th round. I don't think that they'll want to let Frank Darby go. It's kind of a difficult it's a difficult question just on its surface because we don't know how these guys are going to perform in training camp in
Yes.
the preseason. Like all we can do is speculate as to what we think may happen. But my answers, your answers could easily change based on what we see
Oh yeah.
in training camp when we're down in Flowery Branch in July and in the preseason. So, I'd say right now, blind guessing, not knowing anything, I'd say Frank Darby is probably a guy that they'd maybe want to keep on the practice squad. I don't know if they'd be able to even put a guy like Geronimo Allison on there just because he's an NFL experienced wide receiver, and there's going to be injuries across the NFL. There's going to be injuries at the wide receiver position. So I think he's someone that would easily get scooped up, possibly off a practice squad, or if the Falcons cut him before the end of the preseason, there's an injury somewhere else around the league. I think Allison could be someone that another NFL team brings in as a replacement for an injured wide receiver to put on their roster.
Right.
So I don't think that he would even last very long on the practice squad, just given his experience. But yeah, to answer your question, I'd probably go with Frank Darby.
That's a good. Yeah, this is total dart throws, guys. To qualify everything we're saying, like we're not at OTAs. Media is only allowed at like one OTA day out of the 3 that they perform anyway. Like I'm not going down there for 1 day of practice. Sorry, this is what the Falcoholic training camp fundraiser is all about. For training camp, I'll go for 8 straight days, no problem. 1 day, that's too much. Yeah,
I live down here, and I'm not going that, being
yeah,
honest.
they barely let you see anything anyway. Like,
I mean, it's like a 45-minute drive, but I'm not trying to make that drive. I'm not trying to take off work for that.
That's
like,
a big ask.
OTAs.
Yeah, it's a big
It's
ask.
OTAs.
Yeah, it's OTAs. So we're basically taking shots in the dark based on like traits that we like, previous production, that sort of thing. This is all subject to change when they get on the field at training camp and preseason and all that. But this is a fun exercise. We're trying to have a good time. It's off season, so don't take it like completely seriously, like we're snubbing your boy or something.
But also, if we're right, later on, come back to this and. Yeah,
exactly. If we're right, then we knew everything right from the beginning, and we're just experts, and this is what we do. So really we win either way, because if we're wrong, it's like, oh, who cares? We predicted this in June. But if we're right, it's like, yeah, we predicted this in June. So, this is why we do this, so we can be right. That's the only thing we care about. It's just, are we right? That's why I do mock drafts, because I'm just obsessed with being right all the time. But Evan, I'm curious if you have any of these guys. Like, I know you spoke with Tyshon James. Any of these guys you like as potential, sleepers to sort of stick around on the squad or maybe even challenge for the roster?
Yeah, definitely stick around for the squad. I'd be surprised if one of the UDFAs doesn't. Tyshon James, as I mentioned, he's, kind of fits in with the builds they've been getting, like Auden Tate, Cadaryl, Hodge, Drake London, just kind of like the bigger receivers, because he's 6'3", I think, 2 something. Then definitely like Stanley Berryhill, I believe led Arizona in receiving. He also had like 20 carries at running back, and then did special teams gunning for them. So, I mean, that kind of adds some, towards the end, if he somehow made it on the roster, having the special teams experience. And then, as mentioned, that Jared Bernhard, really athletic, was like crazy good at lacrosse. Obviously, this is football, but was pretty good at Fair State and made a name for himself. So, yeah, I mean, it's a toss-up between the 3. I think James probably fits more. Definitely kind of the style of receiver they've been going after, like the bigger guys. But all 3 definitely have their own unique talents. So, but as we mentioned, that's the point of having like those preseason games and what happens at training camp, and we'll get a better idea then.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and like Jared Bernhard, like I really want to like him, but if you run his RAS at quarterback, he's a very good athlete.
Yeah.
Like he is. Like I think he's like a 7.32 RAS at quarterback. He ran a 4.71, which is a good time for a quarterback. It is not a good time for a wide receiver.
Yeah.
So like I'm curious to see, he's a 2.87 at wide receiver as a result. That doesn't, like, there have been certainly receivers that have had success in that RAS range. But his athleticism, he's got very good agility still for a wide receiver. Like, it was elite for a quarterback. It's still good for a receiver. I'm just interested to see how he looks. I don't want to rule him out, but it's going to be a tougher climb for him at receiver than it would be as like a developmental QB or something like that. But, I really like the guy. Like, I want to like him, but once I saw the RAS, I was a little bit cooler on his prospects than I thought I would be just because of that. But, like Auden Tate, is a good example of a guy who's found success at a lower RAS. So,
and like looking at Berryhill, between him and like Tyshon James and stuff, like Tyshon James, like I mentioned, he's like a bigger bodied receiver, like a Auden Tate type thing. Whereas Berryhill, I believe, is like 5'9", so like you're getting complete opposite, body types. And they've kind of looked more, it seems like, at the bigger guys. So he may have a leg up, but they got a shot to prove themselves. There's definitely, in the practice squad rules have only gotten better with how they can keep, whatever it's gotten better over the years, and how many players they can keep on the practice squad. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, and like Tyshon James, like it's interesting to see how these guys all stack up, because you've got like the Berryhill mold, where Berryhill, very polished, very, consistent wide receiver at Arizona, like their leading receiver. I think he's like 5'9" and 6'8", so almost 5'10". I'll give him 5'10". 182, so not huge. Ran a 4.46, obviously still an above average athlete overall. Then you've got Tyshon James, who is like played at Central Connecticut State, not necessarily the level of competition. It's going to be tough for him. But he's over 6'2", 216, ran a 4.49, jumped 37.5 inches, almost 11 foot in the broad. He's a 9.56. So it's sort of like, do you want the polished guy who's accomplished on special teams and that can play now but doesn't have the high ceiling, or are you looking more for the Tyshon James mold, guy who's probably going to need a year at least to acclimate to the NFL but has that athletic ceiling? Tyshon James, his number one comp is Des Bryant. So and watching for when I do these UDFA interviews, I try and include film, but I definitely will watch it before I speak with them, just so I know like who I'm talking to, because shocking, I didn't watch a lot of Central Connecticut State film. Good luck.
So I didn't know much about him, but he definitely plays like a Des Bryant at obviously a lower level, but just the way he catches passes, like he uses his size as an advantage. Definitely bigger people in the NFL than what he's been going up against, but I liked what I saw. So we'll see how he adapts in the NFL, but was a really nice dude, easy to pull for. So yeah, exactly. He'll be my dark horse, but obviously I'm biased because I him. But check out that article too. Let me shamelessly plug it.
Yeah, I mean, I shamelessly was on the horse for Austin Trammell all offseason, and still am now, because, his wide receiver coach talked to me. And if he hadn't gotten hurt, he was going to come on the show too. So, you know,
that's how I was with Caleb Huntley last year. He was one of the guys they interviewed, him and Ryan Newsel, who are still, on the roster. So,
yeah, exactly.
Some of them end up making it and sticking around, and any of those guys could be, one of them. So,
Yep. Yeah, we covered a lot of the guys. Like I said, I'm going to stick with Austin Trammell. I do think that if he's healthy, he'll have a great chance. His thing is, like, can he play outside? Because the size is the concern with Trammell, because, I'm going to pull up his RAS. I forget. He's in that same mold of like a Berryhill. I think he's like 5'10", 180. And the speed wasn't necessarily a big thing for Trammell. I think he runs like a 4.6 or something, which is definitely below average. His thing was, he ran a great 3-cone, ran a great shuttle, jumped 40 inches in the vert, so like he's explosive, not necessarily the long speed, sort of in that, sort of in that kind of, I hate to say this, because of, but like the Edelman mold of the slot receiver. It's not just because he's white, like, but like that's sort of the position he's going to play. And I just don't know how emphasized the slot will be in Arthur Smith's offense. But, if he could play outside too, he offers that kick return. He was in the kick return competition last year. I don't think he's a better returner than Avery Williams, but you want to have at least one more guy on the roster that can return kicks in case somebody gets hurt. And for kickoffs as well, like you're going to have two guys back there most of the time. So I think he's got a chance to. He looked so good in training camp. It was before the pads came on, which is when someone with the elite explosiveness and agility testing is going to stand out. But I really like him. So that's my dark horse, but we'll see how it shakes out. It's going to be the most entertaining camp battle on offense, I would think. Especially because I suspect they're going to hide the offensive line drills like way on the side field again this year. But
and what's there's always those kind of battles, but it seems more so this year, just because there's been a lot of turnover and stuff like that. And I know we'll talk about tight ends, but between tight ends, wide receivers, running backs, and that's just looking at offense. And then I don't know. We expect Mariota to start week 1, but we're going to see some Ritter during the preseason, so that'll be excited. But there's a lot of battling going on this summer. Yeah.
And I know Dwight is asking, what is Cadaryl Hodge's actual measurements? Yeah, I've noticed also there's a lot of weird measurements for him. I believe his official pro day measurements, he was almost 6'2", 198, ran a 4.58, which is almost exactly average for wide receivers. And he had really good jumps, but he didn't complete his agilities, and we didn't get split times. So he doesn't have like a full RAS. I would assume his RAS would be like a 7 or so, probably, or a 6, depending on what the agilities were. If his agilities were good, he would have like a 7+. If his agilities were not great, he'd probably be like a 5. But he is actually has a big body. I don't know where like the 5'9" came from. I think he's at least 6'1". It's 6'1" and 6'8". So if you're 6'8", I give you the extra inch. So
it is weird because I've seen him. I saw him listed as 6'3" on a website and thought that was it. And then I'm looking at this depth chart, this current like up to date depth chart, and they have him listed as 5'11".
Yeah.
And somebody in the chat said like 5'9". So I don't know if anybody really knows his height, but
no one knows. He's just every time you see him, he's a different height. Like nobody really knows. But
right.
I'm interested to see. Now what
we're gonna have to fly to Atlanta.
We're gonna have to. I'm gonna get the measuring tape myself.
Yeah, we need to put an end to this.
Yeah, the official chart lists him at 5'11", so I would think he's probably 5'11", but these are notoriously not accurate before training camp starts. These like measurements and numbers and things like that. So we'll see. It's pro day, so maybe they inflated it, but I would think that he's probably around 6 foot. Or 6'1".
Never trust pro day measurements.
Yeah.
Or pro day like
usually they don't lie about the height at pro day because people are literally standing there watching you measure, but they definitely lie about the
They'll
testing
lie about
numbers.
The 40 times for sure.
They definitely lie about that. But usually the height weight, it's like they do the measurements right in front of you, so it's kind of hard to fudge. But
like when we all joined the Falcoholic, Dave wanted our measurements, and I'm 6'4". And nobody's been here to measure me yet, so that's what it shows on the website.
Yeah, that's my official. I measure in at 6'5", 195, elite.
That's what's on our Falcoholic driver's licenses.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So. Dave's actually 5'2". Weird.
Yeah, the camera adds, the camera adds a lot of inches, isn't that what they say? So
Speaking of which, they actually like
good segue into
but they don't really like measure you at like the DMV, for example. Like
no, I remember just take your word.
I remember they just took my word for it, and they're like, "Oh, what's your height? What's your weight?" Like, "Oh, sure," and then they just never update it.
Yeah. I said 6'1". I think it's probably closer to 6 foot. I think I'm like 6 foot and like 3/8 or something. So it's like if I was doing it for a prospect, if I was doing it for a prospect, I'd round down to 6. Mm-hmm. But for me, I round up. So that's just for yourself. You got to believe in yourself. So
hey, we're all still growing.
We are forever. All right, let's dive into tight end. This one is definitely not as complicated in terms of the depth chart because we got Kyle Pitts at the top, unquestioned. I think we're all hoping for big things from him, particularly in the red zone this year, because I mean he was already a really good receiving tight end, like top 5 in the NFL in terms of his contributions. But the red zone was the one area where we're looking for more. We also, go ahead. Yeah,
I was just gonna say, and I don't know why I didn't even think of it. That also plays into the receiver thing because I mean he lined up outside a bunch to where like he's basically a receiver too. So like that would make them not need as many receivers if they weren't impressed with any of the other guys.
Yeah,
if they wanted to keep extra tight ends. So
Yep. So I think that spot I think we can all agree is pretty safe. The number one tight end. Yeah,
I would hope so.
We also added Anthony Firkser from the Titans to be tight end 2.
That's a big Arthur Smith guy.
Yeah,
that's someone who Anthony Firkser had some fantasy appeal a little bit with the Titans in the last couple of years.
Yeah, he was supposed to be their tight end 1. They ended up not throwing the ball. The whole Titans offense was kind of stuck in a malaise last year. I wonder what happened to it. Somebody left, I guess. But so
no, Kevin, come on. Remember the Titans fans coming into our chat saying that
Arthur Smith's a bum. He didn't contribute to the offense at all. He's actually the reason we lost. Yeah.
They won the Julio trade. How could the Falcons trade Julio for just a second rounder
and a 4th next year? We're still gonna be getting that. Yeah, don't forget. I mean, I haven't seen any Titans fans in here lately. That's interesting that you point that out. But Firkser, interesting. Probably the favorite to be tight end 2, at least as a receiver. Then it's more wide open. The team tends to keep 4, so you'd think there's probably 2 spots up for grabs here. I would say the favorites probably Parker Hessie again, who was on the roster for most of the season after being a practice squad guy. Former defensive end convert when he joined the Titans as an undrafted free agent years ago. Was actually a solid tight end for the Falcons last year as sort of a depth guy, like a tight end 4. He can block, he can catch a little bit, not necessarily special in either area, but reliable. And you have to like that. He knows the system, so that's the leg up. And then they drafted John Fitzpatrick out of Georgia. So we got some dogs on the depth chart here. Yep.
Yes, we got some dogs.
Yep.
We filled the quota.
We did. We're set for another decade now. So
no, we're not. We need another 2 next draft.
Well, now we have to get 3, or else they're not going to be satisfied. It's you took 2 dogs last year. You're only going to take 2 this year. You got to take 3 now.
Well,
and then it's going to be
Georgia
you need 8. Yeah, you have to take 8 dogs now. Every dog you have to draft them. But yeah, John Fitzpatrick, really large person, over 6'7", and blocking specialist.
That's coincidentally the height that I put on my license.
There you go. I feel like now it's every time we talk about Adnan, his height gets bigger. So,
yeah.
It's like the X height, Russian hooker or whatever that keeps getting bigger, and every time you mention her, it's like, oh yeah, So that's a little inside joke there, folks. But I think probably we would all agree that the Hessie and Fitzpatrick probably the favorites there because of they drafted Fitzpatrick, and then Hessie has the experience in the scheme and has been reliable and fairly good blocker when called upon. Would you guys agree with those 2 guys sort of being the reserves?
Oh, absolutely. I think Fitzpatrick's in that Lee Smith role. That's why they drafted him, to be that blocking specialist. And that's a little bit of a niche within Arthur Smith's offense and within the entire NFL actually, where Fitzpatrick has the ability to have a very, very long career. Now, just, specializing in what he does. Not, the tight end position has obviously evolved a bit more as opposed to where it was decades ago, to the point where you have Kyle Pitts as the team's number 1 tight end lining up out wide for a vast majority of his snaps. But, teams still need that guy who will help with the blocking, and especially around the red zone, around the goal line. And Fitzpatrick will definitely be able to also potentially be a bit of a goal line threat at his height, for some jump balls at for some jump balls after he leaks out in those heavy packages.
Yeah, I think Georgia fans were saying he actually has good hands. That just the Georgia tight end depth chart was like so good that he just wasn't ever used as a receiver. Like it wasn't necessary for him.
He made some nice catches. He made some nice catches for Georgia. I mean, he's not known for that, but you know he can definitely catch the ball. Like he doesn't have stone hands out there.
Yeah, that's all you really need from your blocking specialist. Like he's not a dual threat guy. Like we're not drafting him to be that in the 6th round. We just need him to have good hands if the dump off comes his way. And he's really tall, so he can certainly be that sort of, target in the red zone. He can just go into the back of the end zone and put his hands up like Levine Toilolo always did. Hopefully, Fitzpatrick has better hands than Toilolo, because that was the one problem with Toilolo, is he would actually get open sometimes and just couldn't quite bring it in. But Toilolo was an awesome blocker, so we'll see if Fitzpatrick can live up to that legacy. Yeah, Dwight bringing up, remember the game he had to play at right tackle against Minnesota. Yes, I do remember.
That was Teddy Bridgewater's first game.
Yep, I remember.
And yeah, I remember him just like, that was such an ugly game, man.
Yeah, that's not fair to Toilolo to ask him to play right tackle. I mean, it's
everyone
just a
got
completely
hurt.
different position. Yeah,
everyone got hurt in that game. What was that? 2015?
I think it was either 2013 or 2014.
2014.
It might have been 2014. Wasn't it the True Blood year? The Jeremy True Blood year? I don't remember.
God, Thomas Dimitrov needs to be tried for what he did to that roster in the mid-2010s.
True, you guys didn't think you'd ever hear the name Jeremy Trueblood again. You gotta be careful though. He will come after you on Twitter if you slander him. Like to this day, he will come after you. So I can't remember which of us. Like I can't remember who it was. I think he came after Dave. Like recently.
Yeah, I think it was Dave. Yeah, I think it was just Dave. Like himself.
He was like, "Oh, I remember True Blood like blowing all those blocks," and he was like, "Oh, keep my name at your mouth," or something. It's like, whoa, bro, it's been like 10 years.
In fairness, I don't feel like you've actually arrived in this business without pissing off at least one player.
Yes.
Who was that one that you pissed off?
I actually pissed off too. Or are you?
It was a line. It was a lineman though.
Yeah, it was Brandon Fusco.
Yeah,
Fusco.
Yeah, Brandon Fusco. And the thing is, I just like wrote an article saying, he wasn't like really that good.
Yep.
And I was backing it all up with my with stats, with like PFF stats and stuff. And he just like went after the article on Twitter.
Yep. Yeah, that was brutal. And then I think I insulted Wes Schweitzer in like the locker room one time, and like he was gonna say some shit back to me, and he was so nice. He was like, you know what, just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And he just walked away, and I was like, oh god, like I didn't realize that I insulted him. I must have said something wrong. I think that was the first game I ever went to, but Wes Schweitzer clearly proved us all wrong, because he went on to have a very good NFL career.
No, I would take Wes Schweitzer as
in a heartbeat
right now.
In a heartbeart.
Oh my god.
Yep. Like come back to us, Wes. Yeah.
Oh my god, Wes Schweitzer, Jalen Mayfield last year makes Wes Schweitzer look like Zach Martin.
Yeah. I mean, Schweitzer's like starting still for like Washington, right? I mean, like he's like legitimately a starter now.
Yeah, he found his like spot, and good for him. He was a 6th rounder.
Yeah.
Robert Alford was the other guy I pissed off.
Yes. Yep.
Another one of those like review articles where I'm like, Robert Alford wasn't really that good this year. Then Alfred just like went after. He's like, "Oh, you do realize I was playing injured, right?"
No, like
and
no one knew you were
there
injured.
Was no reports about this.
No one said anything to me. Like, would you just expect me to know? Like, what?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
then he ended up not being so good in Arizona either.
Yeah, poor Alfred. Poor Alfred. He should have been a hero, but we're not gonna dwell on that. We're gonna move on. We're gonna keep going forward. Two other tight ends on the depth chart, so not actually a lot here. One of them very recent addition. One of them was a futures contract. The first one I know Robert Kelly is a big fan of. Braden Lenius, the tight end from the CFL, former wide receiver, converted to tight end in the CFL. Had a couple pretty good years there. The Falcons, I guess Lenius actually was asked to be released from his CFL contract, and the Falcons signed him the next day. So I'm guessing the Falcons reached out to him and said like, "Hey, we're interested in having you in camp. Do you want to come?" And I'm guessing that he was like, "Yeah, I do." And so he got out of the CFL specifically, I believe, to join the Falcons. So that's worth a look, certainly at least for the practice squad as a receiving threat there. And then Tucker Fisk, very reminiscent of Parker Hessie, also a two-way player at Stanford, played tight end and defensive end. So another interesting guy, probably more of a blocking type, but somewhat interesting. You guys got any opinions whatsoever about these extremely deep tight ends?
No.
I don't know much about him.
manifesto on Brady.
I like that
No.
Tucker Fisk has like a cool name.
That's a very cool name. Yeah.
I mean, no offense to Braden, Lenius or whatever. His is kind of cool too. But
Yeah, they're both pretty cool. Yeah.
I mean, I think either of those guys will be really hard pressed to beat out Parker Hessie, because I think Ferkser, Pitts, and Fitzpatrick are absolutely locks. Like I'm even going as far to say as John Fitzpatrick will be a lock on this roster. I don't think you spend a 6th round pick on a specifically blocking specialist tight end, and then you cut him for someone else, because you need, with the Falcons, need that position. Lee Smith isn't here anymore. Red zone target Lee Smith. So I think it'll be a question of whether or not the team. I think they will carry 4 tight ends, just because Arthur Smith really likes running that 2 tight end system. Kyle Pitts doesn't line up in a traditional tight end position most of the time. Anthony Ferkser will be there, with Kyle Pitts lined up out wide or in the slot or doing whatever Arthur Smith decides to cook up with him. And then Parker Hessie will be that backup to Anthony Ferkser's role in case Anthony Ferkser, gets injured or something. And then Fitzpatrick has his own role. So, I mean, Parker Hessie's a guy that's been here. He's been here for a while. And I think that, I'm not going to say he's a lock, but I think he's close to it compared to the rest of this competition.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say another dark horse. John Rain. Last year he did. Mm-hmm. I know at Northwestern, because he's like 6 foot or 6'1", he's like a smaller tight end compared to these guys. But at Northwestern he played fullback, and I thought
that's where I might be misremembering. Yeah, I think he is at. I think he is at fullback. Let me pull up.
Because I know he wears number 89. I thought on the official roster he was a tight end, or at least listed. But he kind of brings that, like, he in a pinch could play. Obviously, we have Keith Smith, but he could play fullback in a pitch. So, that's another name that is also present.
Yeah, John Rain is listed at tight end technically. I believe he's going to be, once again, that sort of hybrid fullback.
Right, because he is like,
he's like 6'1". Yeah.
Okay, 6'1". So he is a smaller tight end compared to like Kyle Pitts and the other guys.
Ferkser's only 6'2", so it's not like he's huge either. But
but like Fitzpatrick or whatever, 6'7". Kyle Pitts is what, 6'5",
6'6",
like that?
yeah.
6'6". So
Kyle Pitts
a little 6'6", different, but
I think I have him under fullback still, because I think he's probably just Keith Smith's backup. In case anything were to happen to Keith Smith.
But definitely like forbid, a practice squad.
Yeah, possibly.
Player.
He was impressive last preseason, I thought.
To where, like, if Smith, God forbid, got hurt, that could be, the replacement.
Yeah, and they're probably going to give Rain a lot of fullback reps in the preseason, because they're probably not going to need Smith to go out there and take all those reps. So, maybe. And I think Rain's definitely someone to keep an eye on, like you said, for the practice squad. Potential fullback of the future later, as Keith Smith gets up there in age. But Keith Smith is ageless, so he'll be with us forever.
Did Jaden Graham ever catch on anywhere?
He didn't. I'm curious as to why he didn't get picked up, because he could have come back to the Falcons for just an ERFA, aka vet minimum contract. They didn't pick it up. So,
I wouldn't be shocked if he was someone that the team brings into training camp. Just because he's been there. He made the roster a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Last year he got hurt in the preseason competition, got put on IR.
Yeah.
So I mean that would be a welcome, a guy I would welcome back for a preseason competition at tight end.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wonder if it's because he's not healthy enough to pass a physical. He's still recovering, maybe. But once he is, maybe that is someone the Falcons bring back. Because, like I said, they only have 6 on the roster right now. There's probably gonna be 4 making it. So when you compare that to like the Falcons might keep 6 receivers and they have like 13 on the roster at tight end, they're probably gonna keep 4 and they only have 6. So you'd think maybe they'll look at adding another one there, maybe doing some shuffling. But yeah, I don't really know why Graham didn't come back because that ERFA tender, like I said, it's a guaranteed vet minimum contract. So I don't really know why they wouldn't at least tender him. You know, it's not guaranteed or anything. So questionable there. I'm guessing it has to do with his health. Like you said, he did get hurt last year, end up on IR. So hopefully he's okay and gets a chance to catch on somewhere because I thought he was pretty promising as a receiver. That's all the tight ends. We do have $5, another $5 from George Costanza. Thank you so much, George. To the training camp fund, he says, to be fair to Pitts the Great, to score in the red zone, you actually have to get to the red zone. This offense hopefully cannot be more putrid than it was last year. I think Pitts will have great success this season with the new weapons to help take the pressure and coverage away. Yeah, I think that's the hope, certainly, that with all these other guys that are going to be bigger red zone threats, Drake London, the Anthony Firkser to some extent, you've not those guys, Brian Edwards getting added to Kyle Pitts, alongside Cordarrelle Patterson and these other guys, like that it's not just Kyle Pitts getting like 3 players on him every single play. So I agree with you, George, that should help him as well as just another year getting acclimated to the NFL too. So, yeah, let's thank you to Brandon Brass, by the way, for the $1 donation, reminding me of the question we missed on the Q&A last night. I did want to squeeze that in real quick before we sign off. Noah Cook asked us at the end of the show, what's our opinion on what they're going to do with the salary cap space? Do we think they're going to spend it, or are they going to take it into the season and possibly roll it over to next year? Yeah, I think it's an open question still. If it was up to me, like I'd sign a left guard, but I don't think that would require all of it. Like I think you could go out and get Quentin Spain for like $2 million or something like that as like a veteran insurance sort of slash starter. I mean, he played 90% of snaps for the Bengals last year and graded out as a solid starter. So, I would do that, and then they'd still have some money left over, notwithstanding a possible Deion Jones move at some point. Obviously, nothing has happened on that front yet, or else that would have probably been the lead off, information on the show. But yeah, I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think that they will end up spending this money, or are they gonna just sort of hold on to it at this point? Adnan, you can go ahead and go first.
I think they'll probably hold on to it. Like, I think they want to have that reserve, that reserve for emergencies, and I'm counting an emergency as Jalen Mayfield and these guards looking absolutely horrendous in the preseason, and the team going out and spending it right before the season starts. Like, uh, so basically, what I'm saying is, I hope that it doesn't get spent. If what I think is how if my theory is going to be true, that
Yeah,
they're holding it on for that. Um, but yeah, it's I don't know if the team really looks bad in the preseason and the offensive line doesn't look gelled at all, and they're just letting Mariota get destroyed in the first and second quarter of those preseason games. I think they'll go out there. I don't think that they have a choice. They'll go out there and maybe even look for a trade to uh, absorb someone's salary, or they'll go out and get someone like a Spain, or um, I'm blanking on the guy from the Saints, the guard from the Saints.
oh yeah. Nick
Easton,
Easton.
Nick
Yeah, Nick
Easton.
Easton.
Yeah, I think he's someone that would make logical sense as well. There's a Terry Fontenot connection there too. But I think they'll try to give at least these guards and this roster um every opportunity in the
Yeah,
preseason and every opportunity in training camp. And if they're not getting it done, then I don't think that the leash will be as long.
yeah, I agree. I think, um, yeah, no, I think that we need to see they are clearly committed to seeing if they can get something out of these three young players. That's sort of where we are. I still think we're going to see a veteran come in because I still think that's not going to pan out. I hope that I'm wrong. Yeah, I see people have already started to embrace, Jermaine Ifedi over Caleb McGarry, join the hive now. Because they brought in all this competition at right tackle, which to me signals that they want, it's like they want McGarry to lose that battle or something. Ifedi is certainly a solid right tackle, obviously not spectacular, but he's going to be more consistent than McGarry. McGarry's thing is he'll have games where he's great, and then he'll have games where he's awful. Jermaine Ifedi's going to have a lot of games where he's like average. So he's going to be like against bad pass rushes, he's going to be great. Against good pass rushes, he's going to struggle. So maybe that consistency is more what they're looking for at right tackle as opposed to the Caleb McGarry's, wide range of outcomes. But at guard, I just feel like we got to do something else. Like, we got to do something else, man. But yeah, Evan, anything else you wanted to add on that salary cap discussion, or?
No, I think they're just going to try and spend as little as possible to roll into next year.
Okay, I think that makes sense to me too. So we will see how it shakes out. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't shock me, I guess, either way, whether they sort of go for a discount, quote unquote, off season, or whether they make another move, to shore up the offensive line. But I think it would either be like offensive line or maybe edge, I guess, if they were looking for another veteran there. But I think other than that, there's not really a need. I mean, if you could find like a high impact player at defensive tackle or another, somebody shakes loose at one of these other positions, it's not necessarily a screaming need, but like I think you could make the argument for it. I think that could be considered as well. But I think for the most part, they're probably going to hold on to it, see how training camp shakes out, maybe make another move at that point. So, but yeah, let's go ahead and wrap up, guys. Thank you to everyone who helped kick off our training camp fundraiser. We're 3.2% of the way there, so that's a great start considering we have 2 months. So we're well on track, and we just really appreciate everyone for helping out with that. I think I'm once again going to be able to stay with my family, so I don't necessarily have to get a hotel for 8 days, which helps, a ton, obviously. But I do have to still fly to Atlanta, which anyone who's gone to the gas pump recently knows how the price of everything involving gasoline, especially airplanes, is getting astronomical. So every little bit helps, guys. I'm going to find a way to get down there one way or another, but you guys just blew me away with your Senior Bowl support. You guys have been asking, what you can do to make sure we get that live coverage, and this is one way you can help. Obviously, totally optional. We just really appreciate everyone who does donate. And if you can't donate, what you can do is just tune in and retweet and like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Check us out on Patreon. We all appreciate all that stuff too. It doesn't have to be financial. We just appreciate everyone for tuning in and supporting the show that way as well. But yeah, before we sign off, I want to thank my co-hosts this evening. First of all, we have uniform correspondent and director of guest personnel, Evan Birchfield, at Evan Birchfield on the Twitter. Evan, anything you're working on you'd like to plug?
No, not really. This is kind of like an interesting period because there's, not a lot to really talk about, but we still managed to do it here. I'll have my annual, I think I plugged it on the last show, but my annual 32 teams, 32 sleepers fantasy article coming out within the next week or two. So also next week, June 8th, Wednesday, Brett Jukes, who you saw him last year about this time when he talked about red helmets, the possibility of them, and now we officially know they're coming. He's the CEO and senior vice president of A&B Group, which is like Arthur Blank's business. Anyways, he's coming on the show next week. So we got a fun guest next week.
Yes, so exciting stuff, guys. Like Evan said, I was gonna let him have the thunder, but indeed, guys, we are going to have Brett Jukes, the executive vice president of Arthur Blank's businesses, including the Falcons, back on the show once again to help us break down the offseason, because he's excited about it too. And we are going to get to all that good stuff. That's going to be next Wednesday. Also going to have a terrific podcast guest on Monday for Monday's episode of the pod. We're going to have the one and only Charles McDonald of the Exempt List and Underdog Fantasy, also formerly of the Falcoholic, for those that don't remember those days, here to break down the Falcons offseason, to talk about everything that's gone on and to see, how he's feeling about the team going into training camp. Charles definitely keeps it real.
He sure as hell making more money than when he was with the Falcons.
No kidding. I'm gonna have to ask him about that too, see how that's going. But yeah, we're gonna have that too. So we got some great content lined up for you guys. Next Wednesday, we'll be talking to Brett Jukes for most of the show, and then talking about the offensive line. So for those of you wanting to get spicy with, the Jermaine Ifedi versus Caleb McGarry competition, we're going to talk about that. Also about the interior. Maybe they'll sign someone in the meantime, and that can add some more spice. But again, guys, really appreciate you all for tuning in. I don't think I checked in with you, Adnan. He's at Say Which Way, right? So anything you want to plug, Adnan, before I just cut off without letting you say anything?
No, that was pretty rude.
That was almost rude. That was almost rude. Yeah, I did the late save there, but yeah, please go ahead.
Just stay tuned with the Falcoholic and with the Falcoholic Live. Doing shows every single week, and we are your one-stop shop.
The only game in town, folks.
All Falcons content.
Yeah.
I know that a number of you are starved for Falcons content throughout the year. It may be June, but you're with us here on a Wednesday night listening to us talk about practice squad guys and red helmets. So, I don't know how you would be here without knowing about falcoholic.com, but
just in case, yeah.
Yeah, that is the one-stop shop.
Oh yeah, big time. So definitely check out the site, guys. You can check out the podcast feed as well if you want the audio only. All these episodes are going to be on there now. Plus, I've also taken over officially the podcast as well. And like I said, the only other thing is the Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. We're going to be firing up the Patron Fantasy League soon, so if you want to take part in those this year, we've got commitments from Adnan and from Dave Choate and probably some other folks as well for those leagues. So if you want to play some fantasy against the crew, it's open to all tiers of the Patreon. We're not going to, discern too much, but we had one league last year. I have a suspicion that we're going to have two leagues probably.
And make sure you bring your A game, because I think it was me and Kevin in the championship.
Yep. We were very disappointed by you guys.
We love our patrons, but we're going to whoop your ass in fantasy. That's just how you got to try.
Yeah, when I say fantasy football guru, in my bio on Twitter, I'm not just saying that. I know everyone says that, but it's not a joke. So, this year, guys, you're going to have to be ready to go. Come with your A game, come prepared. So, guys, appreciate all of you for tuning in. Like I said, we'll be back on Wednesday with Brett Jukes for the next episode of Falcoholic Live. Until then, guys, have a great night. We will see you next time. Have a good night, folks.